Train the muscles, not the joints. So for those of you out there that are subscribed to my channel, thanks a lot. But to ensure that you get the notifications, make sure you not only subscribe, but also click the bell right beside the subscribe button, and then click the box called send me all notifications for the channel. And if you want, you can also go further and say manage settings. Basically what you do is you can click occasionally notify me of new videos and activity from my subscriptions. And this will ensure that you get the updates when I upload a video. All right, so thanks for watching and let's get on with the video. So welcome back to another Natural Gallant bodybuilding vlog, and today I'm going to be training some legs, shoulders, and triceps. And today I'm going to be working on some squats for legs and some leg curls. And ultimately I'm just doing some medium weight, 10 to 20 reps. In that range is where I decided is my sweet spot today. You have the sweet spot for every workout. Sometimes the sweet spot is 5 reps, sometimes it's 10 reps, sometimes it's 30 reps. And I know some people that really are stuck in a structure of a certain type of thinking. They'll rev themselves up for the whole week and say, hey, I got to do 5 reps on Friday no matter what, And that type of thinking is kind of what I'm dispelling on this channel, because sometimes things happen that are beyond your control. Sometimes there are certain universal events. I don't know, something that's going on in your body. Maybe you slipped funny when you walked into the gym. Who knows what it is? And this will play a factor in how careful you have to be and what type of range of motion you use, and all these types of things that I talk about on this channel. So feel free to set goals and ambitions, but at the same time adjust them as life adjusts. Sometimes the road turns left, you got to turn left. Even though you want to turn right, you should turn left, otherwise you go over the cliff. So that's the way it is with squats, that's the way it is with lifting weights, and that's why a lot of times you'll see me sometimes do heavyweight, sometimes you'll see me do lightweight. It's just that was what felt right that day. So the body is pretty much imposing the structure upon me. I'm not really imposing the structure on the body, although I do negotiate from time to time and say, hey, can we go a little heavier today? And what do you think? What do you think? Come on, is that pain really necessary? Is that pain a bad pain or a good pain? Like, what is this pain that you're showing me in my lower back or my hip or my, sometimes it's just muscle tightness. And sometimes when you warm up and you get into the groove, then everything starts to reveal that, hey, after you warm up, you're fine, you're strong. There's no danger in actually going a little bit heavier. Ultimately, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, can you get big legs without squats? And I would say yes, because you can see a lot of professional athletes out there that don't squat and they do get big legs. Now, what type of activity do they do? Well, most of the time athletes are doing one-legged type movements like lunges and one-legged squats and walking lunges or step-ups. There's a number of different movements you can do for your leg development if you are unable to squat, or if squatting just doesn't feel right to you. I mean, I'd recommend just finding your way to squat. But unfortunately on the internet right now, there are so many people out there that are saying there's only one way to squat. And if you squat differently than that, then there's something wrong with you. And I think this is actually causing a lot of people to ignore their own bodies and actually not get the real benefit from squatting that they could get if they just adjusted the technique based on how they're built, So if you're one of these people that just can't deal with the hate, and you're like, I just want to, train legs in peace without somebody slandering me or giving me shit about, not doing it the way they think I should. Yes, you can do a lot of movements, and one-legged movements, I would say, are really king for growing legs, honestly. Like the one-legged squats and the walking lunges and step-ups, they've been tremendously helpful in building legs for me as well. So I had somebody ask me a question the other day, and that question was, should they only go heavy, like 5 rep range, on compound movements as opposed to isolation? Now, I don't know if there's really a hard, fast rule on this, but I would say this: the more stuck you are in moving the range of motion around one joint, so that's a typical isolation, like say you're doing leg extensions or something like that, the more dangerous it is to do lower reps or higher weight, like a higher intensity. So you're hitting failure in 5 reps or 4 reps or 8 reps. So if something decides to snap, there's really nowhere where the tension can go. So a lot of times in a compound movement, the benefit of a compound movement is that when you are bench pressing or say shoulder pressing, sometimes if say the delt, there's something going on in the delt or something going on in the pec or something going on in the elbow, if something in there kind of feels tweaky or goes wrong or gets weak for a moment, you can transfer the stress from one area onto another area. So from one joint to the other joint. Okay. But the problem is with isolation movements, when you are extremely strict in an isolation movement or you're locked in to just one joint doing the majority of the work, if something goes wrong, there's nowhere for that tension to go to. So basically it'll just stay on the same muscle, the same tendon, the same ligament, or the same joint. So in the end, because the tension doesn't go somewhere else or doesn't transfer somewhere else, the chance of injury is much greater. Something will snap or something will happen. So that's why it's a bit safer to do heavier weight with compound movements. Now that said, when you're doing bicep curls or something like tricep press downs or push downs, although these things are classified as isolation movements, they're not necessarily classified as compound movements. They can be classified as compound movements sometimes because there can be some shoulder and elbow movement involved in both movements. Okay, so sometimes you can keep the elbows stuck to the side when you're doing bicep curls, but you can also bring the elbows back a little bit, like you've seen me do with my bicep curls, in order to take the tension off the tendons and ligaments by the elbow. Okay, so in that case, you can get away with doing a little bit of heavier weight with press downs and bicep curls as opposed to something like leg extension. Okay, so this is a general rule. Really kind of feel it out yourself and see what feels right to you, but just be a little bit more careful when you're using extremely heavy weight when there's nowhere for the stress to transfer in case something goes wrong. That's all I'm saying. So that's really where you see most of the injuries, when there's extreme tension at the bottom and there's nowhere for that tension to go in case that joint or that muscle can't take it anymore, right? So it's just something to bear in mind. So as you can see, I went from shoulders onto triceps, and you notice probably when I was training shoulders that there's a little bit of an imbalance. One shoulder pops up more than the other, and I explained that in the last video. So if you guys haven't seen the video, how injuries affect the joints, and there I explain how some injuries can affect how you move and stuff, so you might get something out of it, and there's a little bit of cheesiness in that video too, so you've been warned ahead of time, okay? So I went from close grip bench to skull crushers. Now, one thing I really like about skull crushers, especially on an incline, is that you can adjust the angle so that you can find that perfect sweet spot. So if you go a little too high up, you'll notice that the stress transfers to the elbows, and sometimes it gets a little awkward, or you might notice that the tricep close to the elbow gets the most work. But if you decrease the incline, sometimes you'll notice that the long head gets hit. But I have found that there is a sweet spot that you hit the most amount of all 3 heads of the tricep at the same time as you're doing the exercise. And so you can kind of find that sweet spot for you depending on what kind of angle you want to work with. For me, it's pretty low. I'd say it's around 20 degrees, maybe 30 degrees. And here I am enjoying the pump, there you go. Bang! You like that cut? That was great. Boom, I'm right into dips. Okay, so as you noticed lately, I've been doing a little bit extra sets for my triceps just to get a little bit more blood in there and to try to bring out that horseshoe and to get a little bit more of a pump. And like I've talked about before, because of some of the laxity in the shoulders from the hockey injuries, my tricep and my bicep have had to stabilize my shoulder joints a bit. So I've noticed that it's been harder to really get that mind muscle connection and really get them pumped up and going, because a lot of times you can really put the most amount of tension on a muscle when you stabilize the joint, and then the tension all transfers to the muscle. But when the joint is a little bit more unstable, what will happen is that as there's too much tension on the muscle, then the joint will move around and then take off some of that tension. So it gives it a little bit of slack. It'll give the muscle a little bit of slack, and then when it does so, it takes some of the tension off. So I've had to actually focus on really holding my shoulders and holding my joints right in place, really stabilizing them, and then from there I can really get that extra pump. So yeah, so that's what I'm doing here. So I'm just finishing it off with some really short range of motion dips, because when I come down lower I start to feel the front delt, and the whole goal of this exercise is to really just make sure the tricep is what burns out, not the front delt. So I hope this helped you out a little bit today, and thanks a lot for watching, and share my stuff if you like it, and I'll see you at my website if you get a chance at naturalgallantbodybuilding.com.
Haha.